people ask me questions all the time about how to best teach our very young learners how to begin reading and writing in English, which is not, their students' first or native language. So we're going to talk about some different ways that you can engage your young learners in reading and writing. That literacy means the ability to read and write. And reading and writing is a very dynamic process of communication that requires certain skills and strategies for making meaning through interpretation and creation of printed text. So the process of learning to read and write, as you know, it usually begins in one's native language, or L1, and this is a process that cannot be acquired naturally like oral language proficiency. So we all know, right, when kids are growing up, they just pick up or acquire oral language proficiency, but reading and writing needs to be learned through formal instruction, which usually begins in early childhood. So of course, when children are learning a second or foreign language, such as English, learning to read and write is also a dynamic process that requires formal instruction. Okay, but the good news is that one only has to become literate once, because these skills in literacy are transferable from the first language to the second language. That is, this understanding of the connection of oral language to print. Okay, so it's been well established that skills used in reading and writing in the native language can transfer to another language and serve as a foundation for literacy in a new language. The understanding of the relationship between oral language and written language and the strategies for making sense of printed text can be learned in L1 and then applied to literacy in the second or foreign language. In fact, Cummins noted in his work that the better develop the conceptual foundation of children's first language, the more likely children are to develop similarly high levels of conceptual abilities in their second language. So L1 literacy is certainly an asset for building literacy in English and should be supported. Very important. So, of course, in second language contexts where students are likely receiving instruction in school in English, okay, and might be learning their L1 to varying degrees, very important. Of course, most of you are in a foreign language context and should be learning, of course, literacy in both languages simultaneously. So one thing that we want to think about, though, is that for very young learners, maybe who are under 7, maybe they're even in preschool, so 4 or 5 years old, they are still building their literacy skills in their native language, right? So something that we have to keep in mind is that as our little ones are learning literacy in their first language, if we are starting English language instruction earlier and earlier, then we have to think about, okay, what are some considerations for literacy instruction when kids are very young age, when they're just starting to recognize this connection between oral language and print, right? And so I have a picture here, if you can see, which shows some parents who are reading a story to their little girl. Does this look familiar to many of you? Do you also read stories to your kids before they go to bed? Yeah, I see people talking about, yes, reading before bedtime, very important. Yes. So there are all types of ways that we can get our students and our children get to the next set of words, right? And pictures. Even just this understanding of what a book is right, can naturally happen if you are reading to your children at a very young age. Always keep in mind, though, that not every student has the same experience. And so you may want to make sure that you know whether or not your young learners are being read storybooks at home or being told stories at home, because not everybody comes from the same traditions. Not all parents have time to always read books to kids every night. So you might want to check, because that might affect how well students are being able to build their literacy skills in school if they're not having this type of background experience when they come into the classroom. Okay, so the shared book experience, starting with parents and continuing with teachers in early childhood, is very important.